the new Zika, the new measles, the new, is that pocket-sized hand sanitizer bottle still at the bottom of my purse? It's the coronavirus, and it's now a global pandemic that's killed more than 800 people and infected almost 40,000 people worldwide as of today. Honestly though, those numbers change all the time and they're kind of unreliable for reasons that I'll get to later. But for now, I'm here to tell you what you need to know since there are a lot of questions around this. Like, should you be scared? So hold my hand and I'll walk you through the basics. First, where did the virus come from? The coronavirus originated in a produce and meat market in central Wuhan, China in early January. Health officials believe that the disease came from infected animals at the market, as the market is known to sell some pretty unusual species like wolves, rats, and badgers. FYI, Wuhan is one of China's most populated cities and home to about 11 million people. Next, what are the symptoms? The virus mostly involves flu-like symptoms, including fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Be on the lookout for any severe respiratory issues as well, because the disease is quite similar to pneumonia, which personally brings up some PTSD because one time in college I had a really bad cough that turned out to be bronchitis and I had to get an inhaler because my professor said I was being too disruptive during class. Anyway, next question, how is the disease transmitted? Here's where things start to get interesting. The disease comes from animals, right? So for the first couple of weeks of the outbreak, health officials believed the disease could only be passed via animal to human contact. They figured that those who had direct contact with the infected meat at the market could get the disease. So they shut down the market and assumed that the disease would be fairly easy to contain. Big mistake. Huge. Health officials soon realized that the coronavirus could absolutely be transmitted by human to human contact via droplets. So like someone coughing or sneezing around you. Kind of gross. Now, how far has it spread? There are confirmed cases in about 26 countries. There are at least 12 people that have the virus in the US, though about 300 are still being tested. Those cases exist in Washington State, California, Arizona, Illinois, and Massachusetts. There is literally a robot who is testing the man from Washington State's vitals in order to try and contain the spread of the disease. A couple in their 60s had it in Chicago, but they were recently discharged to isolation in their home. However, the majority of cases exist in California, specifically in San Benito County. And then, of course, there are all the cases worldwide. So what's being done to contain the disease? Quite a lot, actually. You might have heard that the US imposed travel restrictions to China, level 4 restrictions specifically, which means do not travel. Most flights have been canceled to China, and I say most because Google still says that you can get a round-trip ticket from LAX to Wuhan for about like $400, which, okay. Anyway, about 20 US airports are screening passengers arriving from China for symptoms, and cruise ships are also anchored in the harbors of Hong Kong and Japan with hundreds of people on board who can't get off because some passengers tested positive for the virus. Imagine having a windowless room. That would be horrible. Also, obviously, one of the big precautionary measures include the quarantines. At the end of January, the Chinese government was like, enough, and they quarantined the entire city of Wuhan. They also canceled a lot of the Chinese Lunar New Year celebrations across the country. As of February 7th, that quarantine order includes dozens of cities across China, affecting an estimated 45 million people, which is the largest lockdown in human history. Health experts are actually calling this approach an experiment because they say that quarantines aren't always that effective because everyone just kind of ends up infecting everyone else anyway, which doesn't really make me feel that much better. So now gymnasiums and other public spaces are being turned into fever centers because hospitals are completely out of space. But here's the thing, family members are also being forced to report other family members who might be showing symptoms of the virus so that they can be quarantined in these fever centers. This causes a whole other set of issues because once your loved one is placed in one of these fever centers, you can't go visit them, you don't really get updates on their condition, and it's likely that they could just kind of go there and sit and wait to die. It's really sad. So now mass hysteria is pretty much ensuing across China as people are literally climbing over each other to grab the last surgical mask, rolls of toilet paper, and bags of rice from the grocery store as more and more cities are placed on lockdown. Now, this is where the story might start to matter a little more to you. So to make things worse, China does not have enough test kits to thoroughly screen patients to confirm the total number of people who have the virus. And honestly, they kind of don't want to confirm more cases because it looks pretty bad. This brings our story full circle to the authoritarian Chinese government whose schematics have created a culture of fear amongst public officials, causing the coronavirus to kind of get out of control. Public figures in China don't often report issues up the chain of command because they worry that they could be personally held responsible when things go wrong and they could potentially lose their power. This ideology is fostered in an environment where people are unable and unwilling to speak out against injustice because of fear. And it's also created an incentive to conceal and delay the circulation of important information and potentially negative press. US. In practice, this essentially means that resources aren't properly being allocated to help fight the disease because we don't really know the scope and reach of it, but it also means that Chinese health officials aren't testing patients out of fear of knowing the results, even if those results could significantly impact people's lives. This isn't speculation either. This information comes directly from NPR reporters on the ground in Wuhan. NPR also says that China's government is censoring critical information via the internet. As you might have heard, the 34-year-old doctor who initially warned the public about the coronavirus died from the virus this week. Just after his death, the hashtag I want freedom of speech started to trend on Twitter. But by Thursday morning, all posts using that hashtag were removed. This pattern of behavior also devalues the seriousness of the disease, making it an even bigger threat to public safety. So taking a step back from the coronavirus altogether, this could be an interesting turning point in Chinese history in relation to the freedom of speech. But focusing in on things again, should you be worried? It really depends who you are. If you live in China, yeah, probably. If you live in the US, just make sure to take some precautionary measures, especially if you're traveling. Wash your hands constantly, buy a pack of wet ones, wipe down your tray tables, armrests, seat belts, grab door handles with your sleeves, and all that usual stuff. But honestly, you probably don't need to be too worried. Contrary to popular belief, you can actually survive the disease. Only about 2 to 4% of those who've contracted the coronavirus have died from it. And those who have died are mostly old people or those with already compromised immune systems. Actually, thousands more people have died this year from the regular flu, about 25,000 people, than the coronavirus. The flu is a much bigger threat to you, so get your damn flu shot. And finally, there's a lot more that I could probably talk about with regards to the impact that the coronavirus will have on the global economy. Some are already saying that this could be a good thing for the US economy in the long run, but it's a little too soon to tell. But this video is already long enough, and to be honest, economics are boring. So that's the story of the coronavirus as we know it today. Thanks for listening, and now you can shock your friends with knowledge at your next happy hour.